All right, good afternoon. Are we alive? Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Special Committee of the Whole meeting, January 22nd, 10 a.m. Today, I'd like to acknowledge that we're grateful to be doing these budget deliberations on the traditional unceded territory of the Sechelt Nation. We respect the histories, language, and culture of the people of the nation whose presence continues to enrich this community. And we'll take this opportunity to recognize how grateful we all are for the recent funding announcement for the Lower or the Reservoir Water Project. All right, I'd like to call this meeting to order and ask any declarations of conflict from council. Seeing none. Any additions or changes to the agenda? And can I have a motion for adoption? And second, all in favor? So moved. Moving on to 4.1, General Operating Fund, and I assume I'm turning this over to Director Douglas.
Thank you. I'm going to just start with kind of a summary where we're at from the last set of meetings, and then we can proceed from there. So, all right, so at the last meeting, we offered a couple of different options with the General Operating Fund. The second option, which I'm showing here, is adding a few additional operating requests, which includes a 3% for capital, sitting at a 9.91% increase on taxation. We also had provided a list of community association requests, of which we can talk about a little bit later today. We went through a bunch of additional operating requests. Senior staff have recommended a number of them. We have some that we still need to discuss, which is in the yellow box, and ones that we're not recommending at this point, but it's a council can talk about those as well. Capital, we listed several capital projects we'd like to move forward on. We provided that in different formats, including the strategic plan by department and by priority, and that was in the previous agenda. We provided ideas on funding for all the capital projects. And in the sewer area, we're a little bit short from funding all the capital, so we're looking at a 3.95% increase there. And in septage, we are looking at closer to 6% increase for septage, 5.87%. Then that's to be able to cover off the project work that we want to do in septage. So that's the summary from the last meeting, just so we know where we're at. Any questions?
Council, questions on the summary? Nope.
Okay. Okay, so today we're hoping to move forward on all the items that we've listed in the agenda. The information that we provided was in the last agenda, so we provided it for council information for them to read, to go through. If there's any questions to any of that, but we would like to start to move forward on items.
Oh, Councillor Shepherd.
Chair, I wonder if we could proceed along with your idea of tackling what I'm hoping are the easier issues, sewer and septage, in terms of making motions, if council don't have any objection to what's already being presented by staff.
Is council okay with that? Yeah. Director Douglas, are you,
For sure, yes.
shall we do that?
Yep.
Okay.
So in the sample motions I have provided samples 3 and 4, which deal with sewer user fees and septage fees.
Councillor Shepherd.
Then I'll make a motion that we approve the text as shown in sample 3 sewer fees, that a sewer user fee increase of 3.95% be included into the 5-year financial plan.
Your second for that? Councillor Bell? Okay, discussion on that motion that's on the table. Councillor McLaughlin?
Yeah, through the chair. I'm just wondering if we could have a little summary of why there is this increase.
So the summary would be at this point to cover any increases to operations and cover the capital requests for 2025.
Something to do with the Water Resource Center? Those ones, or are those separate?
The Water Resource Center is included in the sewer operating fund. But there's a number of capital projects that are also included that they want to go on. They're not all capital around the Water Resource Center, but there's a couple there, yeah.
Any chance you can relate those requests to any page in this December 18th agenda? Or might be helpful for council. There we go.
Okay, so this is the sewer summary that we provided. So there is a surplus in the sewer operating fund of 620,000. And when you add in the capital and their funding sources, so sewer, the sewer reserve, the DCC, we are requiring an additional $149,000 to cover all that. The AOR list for sewer, can you back up? I think 2 slides. One more. Oh, no, right there, yeah. So the AOR for the sewer operating fund that we're looking at is the carbon media replacement, odor control, staff request, the WRC, the turbo blower asset management maintenance plan, and sorry, I can't read the last one.
Yeah.
Operating chemical increases, yeah. Thank you.
Is that an increase in the general cost of the chemicals, or are we having, yeah, so inflationary type thing?
It's inflationary, and they're having to use more chemicals at this point.
Councillor Toth, I saw your hand almost go up. Did you have a question? No. Okay. Okay. Councillor Shepherd?
I guess it's to staff, just to confirm something through the chair, the instrumentation laboratory operator, is that a requirement of a full-time position because of staff or existing staff are sort of being burned out by not having that additional body, or what's a little bit detail of the laboratory operator? Thanks.
Yes,
Dr. Lee? Yep.
yeah, thank you for the question through the chair. So this position would be primarily working in the lab and working with some of the regulatory requirements and reporting, some of the required testing for operations, as well as potentially assisting with operating. So it would, it's kind of the needed position to bolster the capacity of the WRC staff. So this is kind of a way of, it's been very difficult to get operators, so this is a way of potentially freeing up some of the operators to operate while the lab tech focuses on the lab work. This is work that has to be done for our regulatory requirements, as well as optimizing the plant, so certainly necessary.
Counselor Toth?
Thank you, Chair. Now I do remember where my question was going. So the sewer operations summary included the 1.2 million in capital, and just to confirm for myself, mostly because I wasn't here at the last meeting, that list is on page 27, I believe, in our December 18th agenda. And so that's, if I had the numbers up correctly, it's looking at the critical and important aspects for wastewater. I think, question mark? Thanks.
Is Director Douglas looking for, I saw a head nod.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Any further questions? Counselor Shepherd?
Or maybe I'm reading this incorrectly, but I'm looking at page 27 of the December 18th, the summary of critical items, and I don't see the extra person in there.
That's because this, like what I asked about
Yeah,
the capital.
sorry. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Counselor Shepherd?
Sorry, just to follow through. So what's, in terms of the breakout, what's the cost of that person, the lab tech?
It will be in the business case, but I think it's between 92 and 94, very close to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry, I found it. It's 89.
Okay,
Sorry,
thanks.
98.
Counselor McLaughlin?
Didn't turn it off. Yes, I would just like to confirm that there's no way to get by without incurring these costs. Because I start looking at some of these numbers and I start thinking, well, am I getting another person for the Water Resource Center, or am I going to get another RCMP officer? And the capital costs keep climbing. So just to make sure that we really don't have any choice in terms of how we could operate this. Thank you.
I'm going to say there's always different choices, number one. Number two, the Water Resource Center is understaffed. And it's ongoing. And the third thing there's, so this is sewer. So the RCMP would be in the general operating fund. So any increase here is, although it's part of the overall increases, it's separate from the general operating fund. Yeah.
Counselor Shepherd?
I just want to chip in and say that's a really good question from Councillor McLaughlin. I mean, this is a judgment call that this is what we have to make. Do you allot that money to the RCMP or maintain a level of service that is stressed at the Water Resource Center. So I think staff have come forward with suggesting it's a critical item, and we have to make a judgment call on it. Thanks.
Any other comments, questions from you guys? No? Seeing none, although Councillor Toth looks somewhat quizzical. Are you good? Okay, all right. All right, we have a recommendation on their motion on the floor then, and I'll call the question. All in favor? And opposed? You're fine. All right, that motion's carried. Okay. That brings us to Councillor Toth, or Shepherd.
Or I'll make another motion based on sample 4 septage fees, that the septage fee increase of 6% be included in the 5-year financial plan.
Seconded by Councillor Toth. Discussion, questions? None? Councillor Bell, I saw your hand up at one point, but you're going to make the motion? Okay, no questions? Councillor Toth?
Thank you, Chair. This really is, I'm looking at page 34 from the December 18th. Same as what's on the screen right now. And so really we are talking about an increase needed just to cover the capital deficit. We're not even really talking about the future planning or the asset retirement obligations or anything like that at this point. So we really don't have a choice. Thanks.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions, I will call the vote. All in favor? And that motion is carried. Director Douglas, does that complete 4.2 then, or is there more to discuss at this point?
When we do capital, we can do the sewer capital with all
Okay.
capital, or we can do that separately.
Okay, well then let's head back to 4.1.
Okay.
To all our adoring public, I just have to say, I'm sorry, I was not prepared to chair today. So Councillor Shepherd, I see your hand up.
You're doing a great job, Chair, at the last moment. I hope I'm dealing with the right thing here in terms of the base budget, but I'm going to make a motion to remove the volunteer. I'm looking at option 1, additional operating requests. And
Can you give us a page?
I have no page number on this option 1 page.
Is it the page that's up?
So this one's option 2, this page.
Yeah, which one should we deal with, option 1 or 2?
Yeah, well, I think the team has reconciled that we probably need to be starting here at this option 2 page.
Okay. Yeah, I'll make a motion that we remove Connect the Coast, $75,000. My rationale is I really want to support transportation. I think that's the way overall the community should move. I just think we're under such significant pressure in terms of what I'm going to be, and I know Councillor Bell adding to the budget for community safety, that it's just going to take a lower priority.
Counselor Toth, is that a second to that motion? And go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Counselor Shepherd, because that was going to be the first thing I was going to do as well. The regional district also received a request from Connect the Coast for funding towards this project. And it's been deferred for budget contemplation to 2026. So there's going to be some work over this year to look sort of collaboratively together about how they should be funded. And what opportunities there are for, local government partnerships or private sector partnerships, that sort of thing. So appreciate the request, appreciate them coming to us. We're going to try something different for 2025 though, I think.
Counselor Bell?
Through the chair, I also feel the same. I do want to acknowledge Connect the Coast. They've done a lot of work and they're continuing to do a lot of work under very tight budget constraints. Again, not because we don't support this project. It's an incredible one. And I just want to encourage them to keep going and keep looking for funding. I also agree that this is a regional budget item. And I want this to be deferred to, again, next 2026, where we're all having the conversation between Town of Gibson's SCRD and the District of Sechelt.
Do we know what the Town of Gibson's has? We don't, they're not doing anything. Okay. Okay, any further comments on this? All right, call the question. Everyone in favor of that motion? And that's carried. Thank you. Counselor Shepherd?
I wonder, sorry, this is my own lack of preparation, but could I get a quick comment from staff on the consultant technical support? I'm sure it's in the business case, but just what it's the monies are for. Thanks.
Director Lee?
Yes, thank you for the question. So the consultant technical support would be the ability for us to go out to, an outside engineering consultant or a geotechnical consultant or some external expert to assist with non-capital technical issues, which come up frequently, and we just don't have a budget for that when it's not assigned to a project. So this wouldn't be for a specific project. This is throughout the year where we need external experts or technical support for public works projects or an incident that happened or that type of thing. We do need a budget to for external support for that work.
So at this point, it's not directed at any particular project or topic?
That's correct.
Thanks. Counselor Bell?
Through the chair, is this number based on sort of a past number in terms of technical support? I know it's one of those that would ebb and flow. It's hard to pick a number on this because it's based on a project by project basis and projects that come up probably that aren't even known at this point. So
Exactly. So this is just based on year over year, the expectation of some years are lower, some years are higher. This wouldn't be a cumulative budget. This would be something that just we would top up the next year if we hadn't spent it all. For example, we wouldn't carry it forward. But often, 3 or 4 projects or 3 or 4 technical requests could consume that budget quite easily within a year.
Counselor Shepherd?
Through the chair, I think it should be kept in mind that engineering is down 2 bodies. So there's going to be a savings in terms of salary. So that, I don't know if that helps offset the concern.
Counselor McLaughlin?
Yes, I just was, through the chair, would like that confirmed, that is a situation, because otherwise I'm just wondering if an emergency fund is required given a certain project, and if you expect any certain projects to make you require this additional money, if you could let us know, because, yeah, again, $100,000, where, who are we going to put it towards? We have so many demands for critical help these days. So I just would like some confirmation. Thank you.
What is it that I'm not clear what you're wanting confirmation on.
Well, like, this year, 100,000 for something, like, what do you expect that might be? What projects perhaps, or some indication? Because to just ask for 100,000 without a little more detail, as a one-time expectation is just kind of too vague for me.
Yeah, so some of the requests, for example, might be, there could be a road failure, road embankment failure, where we require a geotechnical review to understand what we can do to fix it. So we would need a budget for that consultant support. It could be something like we're having an issue with a low-pressure sewer, and we require an expert in that specific type of analysis to review a fix or an approach or something that we don't have the internal expertise to do. That's something that we've had to do last year. It could be a revision to a standard drawing or something like that, where we require some external support to do some work with our existing standards. These are things that are not tied to capital works projects. They could be tied to, small fixes or replacements on our sewer system, for example, where we need some external review. We just don't have a budget for things that are not capital projects or that can't be attributed directly to a development, where we could have, for example, the developer would cover that cost. So these are things that are more internal municipal engineering work, where we need an external expert. So we don't identify the projects ahead of time. Otherwise, they would be a project and we would ask for that budget specifically. These are smaller kind of one-time needs.
Councillor Toth.
Thank you, Chair. I'd actually like to follow up on the comment that Councillor Shepherd made, in that with the 2 vacancies in the engineering department, is there an opportunity to use some internal recovery to cover, if not all of it, at least a portion of it? Like, can we do $50,000 from, internal recovery from the staff vacancies? I don't know if that answer can be.
Yeah, that was,
Given
I had
now,
that thought as well. Dr. Douglas.
Certainly, we will look at the savings from staffing kind of year to date, put a kind of a timeline to it. Could be utilized to fund part of it. We did utilize some money from last year due to the vacancies. So I think we had about $40,000 of the assistance that we needed for things that cropped up, and we used the savings from staffing last year. So yes, we have, can do analysis on that and come up with a number. I don't think it'll be half, but it'll probably be more than 25,000.
Thank you. Anything else, Councillor, or? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions with regards to the summary, Councillor? No?
No questions. I'd make a motion, though,
And what's your motion?
that we approve the consultant technical support, $100,000.
And you're seconding that? Okay, discussion, Councillor Todd?
Thank you. I guess, yeah, with the idea that it's just 100,000 funded from taxation, regardless of the staff savings that might be available. Because I have a hard time, like Councillor McLaughlin was saying, with the big costs that come along, and is that the most prudent path forward right now? So I don't know that I can support that right now. Thanks.
I would myself prefer to hear if there was even 25,000 that we could shave off of that through other savings before I would support this. Although we absolutely need to have a fund that can be used in the moment when things come up. Any other comments? Oh, sorry, Councillor.
It kind of due to, well, just because we know We do have a start date on one of the 3 positions that are vacant, and we don't on the other. So something that we can kind of stand to, we think is $41,000 could be covered out of that from staff time. So although you would be approving $100,000 consultant, knowing that 41,000 would be covered from staff time. So we would reduce the base budget by 41 grand
Okay.
and have that at 100 grand.
Okay, so do we need to amend that that motion? Let's not amend our emotions. Do we need to amend that motion, or we're happy? Okay. All right, with that understanding, any other comments with regards to this motion? I'll call the question. All in favor? So carried. Thank you. All right, Counselor Shepherd.
And then I'll make a motion that we approve the other items under additional operating request. The SQL server upgrade, Adobe upgrade, GIS enhancements, and airport storage.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? Counselor Todd and McLaughlin. Any questions on any of these items? All right, all in favor? That's carried.
Okay, so just kind of an update. So the 9.91% would now be 8.34% with those changes.
8.34?
Yes.
Thank you. Counselor Shepherd.
Before we get excited at that lower number, I'm going to make a motion that we include in a line item for community safety and turn this over to Councillor Bell.
Hey, okay, so are you making a motion?
Yeah, I guess I'm making a motion to just add a line item, community safety, and then we'll talk about what the number should be.
All right, is there a seconder? Counselor.
Okay, you keep looking at me, so I guess I'll speak. No, I'm not supporting a motion because I want us to, let's just have the discussion. It's our meeting.
Okay,
We don't need to make a motion to add something and then we're going to talk about it and then make some other motions maybe. So Councillor Bell wants to talk. Let's talk about community
Okay.
safety.
all right.
Community safety. Yes, absolutely. We've been doing a lot of work in this area, as you know, from the Community Safety Committee, and we have a lot of data. I will say from a bigger picture in looking at and talking to other municipalities, that community safety is a budget line in every budget that I have seen and talked to in terms of other municipalities. We could argue that it's one of those provincial areas that's been downloaded because we know that it's a complex problem. It's also a social issue. But I think what I'd like to do is proceed. I did do a rationale page up just to add for some discussion. And Councillor Shepherd and I have talked about this. So the first thing I have on there is security guards. We believe that based on the data we have, and we do have some qualitative data that we have been tracking for since we hired this firm, that we should continue to keep this budget line in, and for, at this point, the same amount, which is $10,000 a month for $120,000 a year. So I don't know how you want to take these. If you want to sort of look at a total, how's the best way to move this? Total it and then look at it from that perspective?
I think maybe you just, if you go through what you've got
Okay.
here
Okay.
and
Excellent.
then we can maybe go back and discuss each one.
Okay.
So I
super.
just want to clarify that when you say security guard, you're talking about the current
The current.
patrols, right?
Unisex. I mean-
Unison. Oh, my God.
Good
This is
Lord.
going bad. Okay.
Yes.
Unison. Okay.
Okay, thank
Continue.
you. So there's been, at this point, just to clarify, there's been no additional hours added at this point. And they are working currently 7 hours, or they are working 7 days a week from 10 PM to 6 PM. So just for clarification. Moving on to the next one is bylaw officers. I'm not going to go through all of this other than to say that I just wanted to do some background checking and just seeing what other municipalities are doing. Certainly that the bylaw officer is playing more of a role in community safety. And there is generally one bylaw officer, in some cases, that is looking after more the community safety area and has in fact become an officer of community safety, such as in Quesnel. Our ask here is really, our question is just to look at whether we might be able to look at one of the current bylaw officers to see if they might move more into that area. For the next, I have resources for safe and secure community, creating a broader community lens, takes a community. So these are public events and our social media. We know that coming out of the data as well, that there was a lot around education, what resources are available. I think this is an area that's kind of low-hanging fruit and also gives us, gives the community that message that we are thinking of their safety. So this is really to provide resources for them. There's a lot of resources out there that a lot of municipalities already have that could be used as handouts, they could be done on the website, they could be done as part of an event, etc. I didn't know what amount to put in, so I just put this in for now and we can come back and discuss it. The other one is communication plan. Again, building awareness of who's doing what around this issue. I think that's one of the things that we hear quite often is people don't think we're doing anything in the community. We really need to expand on this. We need to create this awareness because we are doing something. And we need to continue to get that message out. And I just had a couple of ideas, whether it's Community Safety and Wellbeing Recognition Day, prevention programs such as our block watch, et cetera, and social media. And I did put a number in for that. And finally, the graffiti coating for the murals. I know it was in the budget. It's not currently, I believe, in the budget, but I feel that when graffiti is what's the word, as high profile as where this is, it just gives that sense that we're not looking after the property or the neighborhood. So I feel it's important to keep that in the budget. So open for discussion.
Counselor Shepherd.
Through the chair, so if I could just summarize the numbers, extending the existing contract to Unison is $120,000. Second item, converting a bylaw officer, is it 2,000 that you're proposing?
I don't have a number. What I wanted to do was I put it as staff bring forward more information on the feasibility of converting one of the bylaw officers. So I don't know if that's the request or if we have a number right now.
Okay, so no number for that yet.
No.
Third item, communication summary, that's 3,000.
Mm-hmm.
And fourth item, graffiti work, 5,000.
Yeah, and there's a 2,000 in there actually for the resources. So there's resources, communication. So resources is 2,000. Communication plan is 3,000, graffiti 5,000.
Thank you.
So I come to a total of about 130,000, right? agree? Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Okay. Um, my question to you guys, has there been any discussion around doing anything different with the route for Unison or,
The answer is yes. Counselor Shepherd also has information on that, but that's a discussion that we had in our last safety committee meeting. And there are definitely some areas that I think we need to change and look at again, to have a relook at where the hotspots are, and then to have some different routes looked at.
any questions for Counselor Bell? Counselor Shepherd?
More of a point to the rest of council. I mean, we're not including some items like, I think everyone's aware of the recent RCMP request for 2 officers. And although I'm really tempted by the mental health officer, I guess I'm just so irritated that the province has not stepped up since I think it was mentioned 2006 in terms of paying for additional officers. It's a substantial increase to our budget. And I guess I'm putting out to the rest of the council whether that's should be included on top of the numbers already presented.
For myself personally, I'd be in support of the mental health officer if I knew that that's what they would be doing every day and that they wouldn't be backfilling something else, right? And I just don't know operationally. Certainly doesn't work that way in my world. When your baseline is empty, people get moved around. And yeah, I too feel that irritation. And the other piece would be, because I know we've all just seen the ministry mandate letters, and I spent hours with the Ministry of Health one the other night, and like they're going to be even looking at how health authorities are structured and where they can cut. So I do not think there should be an assumption that just because 2 years ago the money was there for a BCH employee to go with the police, that that would still be there today or going forward. So yeah, that's where I'm feeling on that. Counselor Bell?
Yes, I'm going to add to that conversation. I absolutely agree. In looking at the mandate letters and speaking to sort of some of the background people in terms of ministers, it's going to be a very, very, very tough year. There is not going to be a lot of money available. Both the feds and the province are looking at ways that they can cut back. Now, on the other hand, this plan was, as I say, is fairly, what's the word? It's not a big money. It's not a lot of money, but I know it is a lot of money in today's world. But I think it's extremely important at this point that we really define what we can put in the budget, because this enables us to move forward as a committee and to be able to show our residents that we are doing something. Now, I also would like to see this moved into, and at some point into, a strategic plan so that we can have qualitative data as well as measurements. But I do want to see something in the budget so we can move something forward to plan around. So that was really the purpose of this budget. Now, I don't know if there's enough money in here. I know things are very costly in doing some of this, so I would like some discussion around this.
My first question is our community safety or public safety reserve that we have. It's probably in here. I'm sorry. You know, I've handed out the balancing. Could this,
I can find it. I think it was around 180, but I'll find it real
Okay.
quick here.
oh, sorry, Counselor Bell.
Yes, my apologies. I did forget. Counselor Shepherd, you did have one more thing on your list. You had the security cameras on. In Counselor Shepherd's initial list, he had the pilot project for the cameras. and to put on here as well. And my apologies, I missed that on this, for 50,000. So that was also something to consider as to whether we want to look at, as I say, a pilot project for cameras.
Councillor Toth.
Thank you. The $50,000 being suggested for cameras, just an easy one for me to pick up on and ask a question about. Is that intended to be $50,000 per year, or is that like an initial install and then there's like a maintenance fee beyond that? Do we know that?
It's really an initial, it's to fund a pilot project. There are, depending on the type of equipment, ongoing fees, depending whether you want the cameras to be monitored live or have software do it. If you opt for software, which I think Penticton has done a lot, the fees are a lot lower.
Councillor McLaughlin.
Yes, thank you, through the chair. I'm just wondering if the RCMP are in support of the cameras, that they feel that will help them, or whether they think it's just, I mean, I'm concerned about it being a bit of a violation on people's rights to be under camera like that for those reasons. So I'd like to know if the RCMP has commented on that. And in terms of the routing, I don't know the routing, but I guess the hours will be extended into the evening. Is that the idea? Because it seems to me that's, you know, if I was looking at crime and issues and trouble, especially in the village area, I would be focusing in the nighttime, not so much during the day. As I understand, some security is being provided by local businesses anyway, and so there could be an overlap there that is just maybe somewhat redundant now. Thank you.
So I can answer that question. It is, right now, their schedule is 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. And we would continue with that schedule as far as, at this point.
Did you have a comment on the cameras or the RCMP comment?
They have commented generally, and I think it's a good thing to reconfirm. But I think at the public meeting in October, their comment was that they need very clear images, and they need, it's of some help, but there are also problems related to it. So to back that up, I would comment that communities like Penticton that have adopted this for quite a while have moved from initial pilot projects to, you know, doubling and tripling the number of cameras that they've used. And other communities, larger communities, you know, Merritt, Prince George, are going to Penticton for advice on how to adopt this program. So it's not something, presumably the police in those communities are in support of it.
And they're using it specifically for community safety as opposed to traffic?
Correct, for both uses, yeah.
It's actually pretty impressive, the quality of these cameras that we've seen, at least at the, you know, of course, the ones the vendors are showing us at UBCM and such. But I know that with, like Karen's comment was, if somebody's got a hoodie over their face, it's not necessarily going to help them. But that's not always the case either. So, yeah, Councillor Bell.
Yes, through the chair, I was looking at some of the comments from Prince George, the RCMP, and yes, they are proceeding as their colleagues are in Penticton. The comment that was made is that from the RCMP in Prince George is it does not act as a deterrent, but it does act as a way to identify people. So that was the way that he described it. So, but they are proceeding with cameras in Prince George as well.
Councillor McLaughlin?
Yes, thank you. Further to that, I was just wondering where you plan for the pilot to be, where you plan to put the cameras. And I would just caution using examples from much bigger places. you know, may not be totally appropriate for this location. So I'm just trying to see what is appropriate for the context of our community in terms of size and the issues we face. Thanks.
If I could jump into that, I think it is a good question, but I think we're getting too far into the weeds here as in terms of the placement of camera. It's happy to debate whether $50,000 should be in or not, but I think, you know, we should stick to that question.
Yeah, I'd be interested to know whether any other communities have had any legal challenges as well with the cameras. But I'm certainly in support of looking at a pilot project. Okay, other comments, questions about anything? Oh, Director Douglas.
Now my screen's gone, $184,000 in the,
And anything in your wisdom, anything that we've talked about wouldn't be appropriate to use funds out of that reserve?
I think if the plan is to be ongoing, meaning, I mean, the guards is a good one. If we intended to go further in 26 and 27 and 28, at this point, then, you know, I would want to start taxing for some of that, just so then,
Right.
because otherwise it's a big tax hit next year.
Yeah.
If you think the security guards are, you know, one more year and see how the mix of whatever you approve works, then you could fund that one from the reserve mainly. And the rest of them generally are smaller value, dollar value, so, except for the cameras.
Right.
And if the cameras are, you know, I don't know what the plan is, you know, there's often a capital cost upfront for cameras and then ongoing costs, so I don't know what the split would be there. So, you know, funding some of the cameras might come from there as well.
Councillor Bell.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, I have two questions. Director Douglas, I know that in some cases I have seen, and if I get the numbers not exactly right, but in Campbell River, for example, they have a budget, I believe they put aside of something like $1 million. Now, they've spread it over 4 years. So in other words, what they've said is community safety is very important. They've made that decision as council and spread it over like something like $400,000 a year type thing. So is that, you know, and the other thing is that, you know, a lot of these initiatives are, I think that will evolve. And this is what I'm seeing is that many of the municipalities are evolving with these initiatives. So now some are trying community safety offices where they now have a bylaw officer and a community safety officer. I mean, I really feel that everyone's at that point where they're trying things and seeing what's working. And, but I will say that every one of the municipalities that I've spoken to is all got community safety in their budgets. So is that a way that we should be looking at forward, or again, it's just for discussion? So that would be my first question, because I hear you're saying that if we're going to continue with some of the things like the larger budget items like security, maybe we could spread that out over a few years. Is that a possibility? Is that a discussion?
Yep, I mean, you could, that would be very similar to the way we do the capital planning right now, where we've gone 3% cumulative. We could start a plan based on community safety, so much cumulative every year, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we could draw down that reserve over a couple of years, maybe. So just a reminder, 1% is $137,000 from taxation. So if you say you wanted to go 0.5% cumulative, you know, 2 years in, with this year, next year, you'd have 137,000 in 2026. So you'd have 60,000 this year, 65.
Okay. So how to proceed with this?
Mhm.
Would it be fair for us to sort of vote on the items separately, if it's something we're wanting to see move forward, and then have you go away and come back with some suggestions of how, or what the cost would be, et cetera?
If the costs are unknown, yes.
What's that, sorry?
Yeah, if the costs are unknown.
Yeah.
Right. We have costs for most of the stuff here.
Right, but
Yeah.
what the impact would be on how we fund it.
Yeah, or I'm going to say yes if we're more comfortable doing that, but we can also talk about the funding after we know, as a group, after we
Okay.
know which items you want to move forward with.
Okay. All right.
The chair, may I? Me, yeah. So if we were able, if we did go over in some of these items, because as I say, some of these are, unknown, could we use the capital reserve as a backup fund, the capital safety reserve?
I'm sorry, could you ask that again?
If we were to go over, like some of these, as I say, are unknown. I know the security is a known cost. Some of the resource and communication stuff is just a number I put in. If it goes off, could some of this be taken out of the capital safety reserve?
Well, the safety reserve, yes. We would have to come back to council that this program is over by $6,000 or $10,000 and we come back. Yeah.
Okay. Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes, thank you through the chair. Yeah, I am just concerned that the safety issue is, the costs are not really likely to be funded by the provincial government. The premier has laid out his priorities and where he wants to see us focus. And although it is to do, I think, with the RCMP, that's their job, a basic service, police, to provide safety. So we're taking money from fund where we don't have enough RCMP officers, and then we're saying we're going to spend that, and then we're saying we don't have enough RCMP officers. So, I mean, even if we got one more RCMP officer, use the funding for what it's for, I think that would be a win-win because we're using our funds for what we're supposed to be using it for. We're not going to be sitting around and just complaining to the provincial government that we're not getting enough funding for safety and why don't you fund it? Because that to me is just going to be a waste of breath and effort. So the idea of, taking a bylaw officer, maybe changing their role a bit and funding an RCMP officer, I think is better. And I would not really want to support cameras until we're sure that it is really legal. We don't even know where you want to put those cameras. So I really can't support that because, yeah, I can imagine that it could lead to some issues. I mean, if you want to have a camera, put it at a place where we have traffic problems, like Cowrie and Trail. People are saying, we need streetlights there, it's not safe, blah, blah, blah. So maybe that is an idea to put it there, and you might catch some issues in terms of traffic and other people coming or going from the downtown, causing trouble in terms of the businesses. But I mean, I'm not saying I won't support it, but I mean, I do have these reservations. And I think if it goes further even next year, like I will have even more reservations if we keep following this approach, that we just need to kind of restructure, reorganize what we do with the role that we've been given and the money we've been given. And also support the RCMP because, there are gals and boys in blue and they're trying to do their job and they're not so happy about being understaffed either, I'm sure. Thanks.
Sorry, who had their hand up first? Councillor Bell.
Through the chair, so what I'm hearing, Councilor McLaughlin, is that in addition to this list, you want to add the RCMP officers onto this list. Because at this point, we're going through the list to determine which direction we're going to go in terms of spending, budgeting for these items. So do you want to add this to the list?
No, I don't, because it's too much money. I think it's either or at this point. So I said, I would rather have RCMP officers, but I don't feel from the conversation here that there's much support for that they just want to, you know, keep going with what we've started here and use the money we have, even though I feel it's not directed necessarily the best way. But so it's not both. I don't think we can afford both.
Councillor Shepherd?
Yeah, just through the chair to respond to that, I'd love it too if we could have more RCMP which is traditionally covers community safety. But as the chair pointed out, we don't know adding one officer, two officers become general duty officers who cover the entire Sunshine Coast. And, you know, unfortunately, Sechelt, like almost every other community in BC, are having these costs downloaded by the province. So, yeah, I feel very under pressure to respond to community needs. And it's resulting on taxpayers and districts picking up these increases. But I'm just not convinced that replacing everything that we've proposed here with one or two RCMP is going to solve the problem. It seems to me that what we're proposing is focused on the district and community safety and wellness focused in our area. Thanks.
If I
Go
could
ahead,
just
go ahead.
comment. Yeah, I don't think what we do here is going to solve the problem. The problem is homelessness. The problem is fentanyl. The problem is the economy and the politics of the world right now. So I think we need to have faith in our institutions and faith in what we have here. And I think that they will, if we at least have one more RCMP officer instead, that they know what this is all about. We meet with them regularly and, you know, their office is right here. So I don't feel that that is an issue, really. Thank you.
Through the chair, I don't, in all of the community safety meetings I've attended, I have never heard the RCMP saying that hiring one or two officers is going to solve the problem. And, you know, I hope I didn't give the impression that what we're proposing is, in my view, going to solve the problem. It's not going to solve the problem. The councillor is correct. But you know, we're forced into coming up with options here. So is this going to help? We've got a lot of legitimate concerns being expressed by people that we do something quickly. So we're just trying to come up with the best options. Thanks.
I'll just add that, sorry, oh no, what was it? That the RCMP are actually appreciative of the unison patrols. They do see it as more eyes on the ground, and they, you know, do connect with them. So, I mean, I would love to have all the money in the world to be able to do all the things as well, but I think the other piece of this is it is fairly responsive to what we heard at both of those meetings. Everybody wanted more RCMP, but strangely enough, nobody wanted to tax for it. Maybe two people wanted to tax for it. So those are two very, very different questions, you know, and so yeah, if we had all the money, but we don't, you know, these are tough decisions that we're going to have to make. So I think we should just start talking about each one, if you guys want to throw some motions out there.
I'm just adding, Chair, that the other thing we've talked about is that perception of being not safe and safe here. And I think that if anything, if this plan could start to look at that perception, that there's more eyes and ears out there in whatever way that looks like, even the grassroots things like Block Watch, our community associations being more involved, et cetera. That's part of this hope, that they'll feel that there's more being done. Okay, I'll start with the security then. I'd like to make a motion that we budget $120,000 for the Unison Security Patrol.
Do I have a seconder for that? Discussion? Counselor Toth?
Thank you, Chair. I haven't weighed in yet because I haven't really known what to say to this, but yeah, I think, you know, the couple comments that counselors have made are correct. Like, really, none of what we do here today or contemplate approving is going to solve the problem, any of them. Perception of the community is key on this. You know, the increasing the feeling of safety. We haven't seen a report from the security patrol in some time to all of council. Like the safety committee, I guess, has seen it, but all of council hasn't seen anything in some time. So I don't know if they're still being effective. I am generally supportive of some sort of overnight surveillance of our downtown, whether that's security patrol or RCMP. It doesn't particularly matter to me. I think the security we have more say in, right? They might not have all the same, you know, abilities to arrest and things that the RCMP can do. But I think it's pretty clear that we have more control over security patrol versus an RCMP member that may get called into general duty or get sent up to Pender Harbor for the night or whatever. So I think I'm supportive of the security patrol continuing. The other things, I don't know, but we'll get to those when we get there.
Counselor Shepherd?
Yeah, through the chair, I'm obviously supportive of this. I think we're moving what the committee is recommending to council is, or the advantage of it is that we have security coverage almost throughout the day, so that we have Unison operating from 10 in the evening till 6 in the morning. And then I believe Councillor Bell is going to suggest that we convert one of our bylaw officers over to, in effect, a community security officer, so that we have coverage through a sort of 8-hour period during the day. So, you know, it's to Councillor Toth's point about how effective Unison is. They obviously can't make any kind of arrest. They won't enter into a confrontation. However, I think, as the chair has mentioned, they're very happy with having Unison on board. We get a lot of data from Unison on their daily patrols, how many people they've interacted with. They get to know the people they're interacting with, which I think is to the district's advantage. So I'm in support of this.
Okay, Counselor Bell?
I want to comment to Councillor Toth. Absolutely, that the data is going to be very important to be able to share that data as we go forward. So we do have it, but we will do a better job to ensure that we share that with council. So you understand the impact as well.
Okay, any further questions?
Yes, thank you to the
Counselor
chair.
McLaughlin?
Yeah, I guess I'm a bit disappointed that we don't have data. I mean, we've been working on this for 2 years and there's no data here I haven't seen it. It hasn't been brought forward, so it's invisible. And so I have a hard time supporting something when I haven't seen any data to back up where they're walking, when they're walking, all this other information you say they're collecting. That's how I would make an informed decision. So I'm not really making an informed decision if I just go on faith. Thanks.
Counselor Bell?
Well, Councillor McLaughlin, I appreciate that, but I think you're going on more than faith. There's a committee that is working very hard in trying to resolve this problem and working with many people that are part of the community. So it's more than faith. there is the data there. And I can say as a council member, the data is there. I'm happy to share that right now. We have been a little hesitant because of some of the privacy stuff, but we'll find a better way of sharing that data.
Point taken, and that is one of the reasons that we have these committees so that they can make recommendations to us. I'll have to go back in the email and, I don't think that your complaint should fall on Councillor Bella's chair, but certainly to me, because that was definitely one of the things that I was sort of disappointed in oneself around not being as communicative as we should have been, but I'm sure that I have sent out a report since these guys have been working, but it needs to be done more often. Point taken. Is there any further comments on unison? The topic? No? Okay, I'm going to call the question. All in favor? And opposed? Councillor McLaughlin opposed. All right, thank you on that. Next. Oh, sorry, Councillor.
Thank you. Just real quick, I wanted to clarify something for myself here. Director Douglas mentioned $180,000 in, thought I'd heard public safety reserve. But I'm just wondering if, are we talking about the possibility of funding some of this through the community crime programming reserve, which has a balance of $180,000, or the public safety reserve, which I thought was more meant for RCMP related issues.
Oh.
So I think it's relevant to the things going forward next for discussion.
Director Douglas?
Sorry, yes, that's where the 184 came from, was the second reserve that you talked about. The other one has been kind of from council's previous direction, used for RCMP building, courthouse building, and other related costs around RCMP and the courthouse. We did use it once to partly fund the additional RCMP member, but that's been now over to taxation.
Mayor Henderson has entered the building. Do you want to sit here?
Chair? Okay.
Mayor Henderson up. Today, we're talking about community safety items from that Councillor Bell's brought forward, okay? We have just talked about, we've just passed unison, or looking at funding unison for the next, putting in a line item in the budget for community safety. All right, when you're ready, Councillor Bell.
Okay. All right. So next on the agenda is bylaw officers. And really, I don't have a cost on this. My question was to staff, whether staff could bring forward more information on the feasibility of converting one of the current bylaw officers' job description to a community safety officer.
So basically, what you're asking for here is like a staff report on what that would look like.
We can move forward on this or not.
And, just speaking from experience, this isn't as simple as it sounds in a union environment. So I definitely want Director Roberts' comment on that. Thanks.
Thank you for the question through the chair. So we would be looking at a joint job evaluation committee review if we were to make this change, which we can do pretty quickly. I would imagine it would be an approximate grid upgrade, which would lead to about $4,000, but that would also include things like mental health first aid training or other types of training that would bolster the role. So I can approximately say it would be about $7,000 to make this change. But again, I would have to, I can absolutely do a staff report, but we'd be looking at a review with the committee, which is union and management members that are trained to evaluate the job. Thanks.
So can you restate what your motion would be?
Feasibility and cost. So it probably costs more.
All right,
Staff bring forward more information on the cost of converting one of the bylaw job descriptions to a community.
okay. A seconder for that? Counselor Toth, I'm gonna. Any questions, comments on this motion? Counselor Shepherd.
I'm just wondering if we should put a placeholder amount in the budget of 7,000.
I will do that.
Yeah. So, go ahead, yeah.
And a motion to put a placeholder of $7,000 in the budget for this potential position.
Well, I was gonna say, isn't that, can we agree that's a happy amendment? Yeah. Are we all happy for the motion to be amended to include the placeholder in the budget? Seeing no issues. Okay, can I have a second just to prove it? Thank you. Any other questions on this item? All right, comments? Counselor McLaughlin is
Thank you.
being a really good chair today.
Am I?
Yeah, you don't
I'm
know you're
keeping
doing it.
everything straight in line here.
Yeah.
Well, okay,
Comment.
I think it's a good idea to explore this. It may be a way we can go to have the control over a position and provide the service without having long-term patrols, private patrols. So yeah, I would support it. Thank you.
Other comments? All right, I'll call the question then. Oh, sorry, what? Counselor Shepherd.
Sorry, I'll, to the chair, I'll just chip in that one of the advantages of doing this, there's a sort of strong opinion at the Committee on Community Safety that we have an entity that where people could phone in and in cases of problems. So there seems to be strong support for it at the committee. Thanks.
Counselor Toth.
Thank you. I'm wondering if staff have off the top of their heads the approximate cost of a bylaw officer, like a standard bylaw officer.
Thank you for the question. I would say approximately 85, but we can have an actual number shortly.
Yeah,
Thank you.
That's right. Anything else? All right. No, you're good? Okay. Call the question. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Counselor Bell?
And, having resources available in terms of for the community members, making it available at public events, putting on the website. So just reminders, have you thought about this when you lock up your house? Very simple, just reminder resources. Lots out there already in the municipalities, so I don't think we have to really create the wheel. It's just a matter of getting them done. So I put in $2,000. I don't know if that's enough, but I would like to, it's 2,000.
Would you agree that both this $2,000 and $3,000 item are around communication of various types?
more education.
Right, because I think we were talking about education being part of that.
Yeah.
I mean, and honestly, this was the loudest thing that came through all the feedback. So,
Made that adjustment, yeah. So it would be $5,000.
and so adding $5,000 to, looking for a communication plan around community safety. For a second, Counselor Toth is a second. Any questions, comments, Counselor Toth?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering, to me, this sounds like something that we could absolutely fund through the crime programming reserve. I'm just wondering if if we should be prescriptive now, or if in the next version, staff will come back with sort of the best suggested option for funding some of these things.
That's my thought. Yes, Director Douglas?
Yeah, let's see what the total is and then we can probably be able to discuss it today.
Thank you. Any other comments on this one? Okay, call the question. All in favor? And that's carried.
Yeah, so the next one I had was on graffiti coating for the murals. And so my feeling is I would like us to proceed with this. And I know that there's some, I know that Councillor Shepherd will speak to this. I have a question. So with this graffiti coating, doesn't prohibit it from happening again? So it doesn't, like, if this coating isn't like a stop the graffiti on the building forever? I don't know anything about this coating.
I can answer that. So the coating prevents the graffiti, so they can take it off, so that it protects the mural indefinitely. So when things happen, like at Friendship Park, the Dean Schultz came in and had to redo the painting, but this would prevent that from happening.
So the graffiti would go on there, but it would be able to be cleaned off.
Removed, and not
Removed.
without, and protecting the art.
Like yeah, okay.
And so if you think about the amount they spent on redoing that piece of art, it would be a decision of council whether we wouldn't have the money to then redo it, so you would just remove the artwork.
And would $5,000, like, what's the cost of,
Yeah.
say, that building down at Friendship Park to put that on? Like, how much does that give us? Does anyone know? Oh, okay. Okay, never mind that. So it sounds like, and just to clarify, it was removed from the budget? Right? The graffiti?
Just looking that up, but it's, yeah, just looking that up.
Because we don't need to talk about it if it hasn't been removed.
In what year? Yeah, it has not been added to the budget. There's a request for it, but it hasn't been added at this point.
Oh, okay, so it's yet to be discussed.
Yes.
Okay, well then, let's not talk about it right now. No, that's fine. Counselor Bell, you did a very thorough job. Thank you very much for that. Oh, want to talk about the cameras? I forgot. Okay. So, for Mayor Henderson's benefit, it's not on this document, but Counselor Shepherd has put forward doing allocating $50,000 for a pilot project with regards to Cameras. Do you want to just speak to it just a bit more for Mayor Henderson's benefit?
Yeah, this is an item that has come up at the community safety meetings as an option. You know, we're looking at lower cost options rather than adding people. And it's a system, cameras are being adopted by many communities, smaller, larger, and proving to be effective. You know, I acknowledge Councillor McLaughlin's points about privacy and so forth, but despite that, they're being adopted. So I'd like to allocate some monies towards a project like this. And from my discussions with the business, community leader in Penticton, they started off with a pilot project of actually of $40,000, but that was some time ago. So I've adjusted it to 50. It gives us one installation of between 1 to 3 cameras in one area, and it's not manned, not monitored by a person. It's using software, yeah. And I'm entirely happy if, you know, council wants to sort of turn this over to staff to reconfirm the numbers, but I'm really just looking for a placeholder number that I've seen in other communities. Thanks.
Thank you,
Councillor
Chair.
Toth, yep.
I heard 1 to 3 cameras.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money for not a lot of cameras. I would be very hesitant to support that much money for that small of a project. I hear Councillor McLaughlin's concerns about privacy. The fact of the matter is, if you're out on the public streets, it's well known that you have no expectation of privacy. Communities all across the country and the province are using cameras on the streets every day. You know, the city of Surrey has a multi-million-dollar a year traffic operations center, which has cameras at every intersection in Surrey, like high definition 4 and 8K cameras. But I would be, I can't support $50,000 today based on what I'm hearing, but I would be interested in maybe getting some information back from staff reconfirming, or, you know, we're working with a vendor now for camera systems. Is there something that we can do within our existing budget, or not budget, but within our existing contract maybe, that could see some improvements? So that's just my thoughts. Thanks.
Mayor Henderson?
Thank you, and thank you, council, for indulging me in being late. I did have a long-standing prior commitment. Yeah, I agree with that comment. I happen to, in another part of my life, have been dealing with security cameras recently, and I don't know where you could source a camera for $10,000. I'm sure you can, but you can source a whole lot of very high-resolution cameras for hundreds of dollars, not thousands. So I'd certainly support the intention of this, that we get more, you know, it's almost like putting a sign up, hey, watch out for security cameras. Doesn't matter if they're turned on. It's a deterrent just by having them. But I'd support very much having a series of cameras with perhaps the SDBA's input, but taking Councillor Toth's lead to, let's find out from staff what we can do with, I mean, 50,000 is great.
Councillor Shepherd?
Yeah, I'll happily amend that motion to ask staff to investigate a camera system. I wonder if we could, I don't know if we can give them more. I guess we would ask them to come back with a report on the costs of the camera system and take it from there. Thanks.
And I think I would add, I would want to know if there have been any legal challenges, or if there's any going on within communities that are using them, or any other related issues, I suppose. So is that a motion that you've made to ask for a staff report on this topic? Okay, Counselor, that's a seconder from Counselor Todd.
To speak on that, yes.
Counselor McLaughlin.
I agree with Counselor Rowe's request for a report with some of the legal feedback as well, because we're not using this to, it doesn't deter crime. We just went through a previous conversation, I guess the mayor didn't hear. And, you know, I am concerned about people's rights. We're not using it for traffic, clearly. That's not what we're using it for. That's what most of these are for. So I think it's good to have a little extra look into the things before we proceed. Thank you.
Mayor Henderson, your mic's on. Did you have something?
Bad habit.
Oh, okay. All right then. Sorry. Oh, Director Douglas.
Just a couple things I think around the cameras. The cameras would need to be powered and have internet access. So you're not just looking at the cost of the camera. Okay. And talking to my IT staff, we feel we could have a number of locations for $50,000, not just one.
All right then, motion on the table. No further questions. All in favor? And that's carried. Can I suggest, can the chair have a break, like 5 minutes?
Of course.
I'm elderly. Okay, welcome back. We're going to move into the capital discussion of our day. Director Douglas.
Just before we jump into that, so the total amount of those additions for community safety are $137,000. We were just talking here a little bit, and you know, if we wanted to move this forward, you know, so I think if we used 100,000 of the reserve and 37,000 from taxation, it makes some sense. There's two items that would be carrying on, you know, be $5,000 worth of graffiti. And if the community officer is ongoing, that would be an ongoing cost. So those would be more relegated for taxation. We don't know where the security guards are going to go next year for 2026. So that's where I'm splitting, you know, covering costs, some of it with taxation and some of it with reserve. And the resources and education, if we, you know, buy them this year, that shouldn't be an ongoing cost. You know, it should be, we should have brochures and, you know, lots of them, you know, for the future type of thing. So I don't know. So I put it to council that, you know, 137,000 total, 100,000 from the community crime reserve and 37,000 from taxation.
And so what does that leave in the reserve?
That would leave $84,000 in the reserve.
Sorry, how much?
84.
84?
Yes.
Council? Okay, Councilor Shepherd?
I'm happy with that recommendation.
So Councilor Shepherd's moving a recommendation that we fund $137,000 for community safety, 100,000 through the community safety reserve, and 37,000 through taxation.
Yes.
And seconded by Councilor Bell. Any other comments? Mayor Henderson?
Thank you, Chair. I may be, having missed the first hour or so, have we talked about the use of reserves? I'm really hesitant to just use it to reduce the percentage for the year, because reserves only exist one time, and we're going to have these operations going forward. I'd like to see us really be clear that this cost is a total cost for the year. So my question, first of all, have you discussed earlier about, are we okay taking away from reserves to temporarily reduce the increase? Because, yeah. So has that been
That
discussed?
pointed discussion has not been had. I
I
mean,
think we-
personally,
Yeah, go ahead.
personally I am, but as evidenced by the fact that I vote to do it, but we haven't specifically had that discussion.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but there's a messaging that needs to accompany it that, hey, just because we've only spending 37,000 from taxation, the likelihood is it's going to be 137 from taxation next year.
Correct. So I think we need to reflect the fact that the total cost for the community safety spends are
Yeah,
$137,000.
well, at least, plus staff
Yeah.
time, which then gets into how else can we fund it? Which you've all heard my comments about going back and getting reimbursed for all our costs for a lot of things that are the responsibility of other orders of government. So for the purposes of the budgeting, I'm not particularly concerned, but whether it's 100 or 50 or whatever, I am concerned that we not lose track that it is 137 plus a lot of staff time. I think I've said, you know, I think there's easily $2 million a year that costs that we're incurring on behalf of the province. If we had that money coming in, we wouldn't be talking about a tax increase. Thank you.
Can't argue that. Okay. Sorry, we have a motion on the table. Any other comments? All right, all in favor? And opposed? No one opposed. That's carried. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, so on to capital, the staff are recommending total of $5,976,614 for capital. And on page 27 of the previous agenda, we've provided funding sources for that.
Yeah, let's let council get to, everyone get to page 27. You're not there yet. Okay, do you have, oh, yes, go ahead.
Thank you. So just real quick, this is an accumulation of the pages prior, I'm assuming, looking at the bottom of page 27 here, the blue box.
That's correct, yes.
Now, is that critical, important, and strategic, or is that just critical and important, or?
That is just critical and important.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Shepherd.
I'm sure there are going to be a lot of comments on capital. The first thing that jumps out to me is the air curtain burner. I recognize it's mentioned that it's only to be funded if there's a grant, but there is another entity that's looking at bringing one in. So I don't think we have to mention it at all.
Councillor Toth.
Thank you. Yeah, the air curtain burner that the community forest is looking at acquiring would be for not only their use, but community use as well. So I'm curious as to whether we need to go from none to two in Seashelt in 1 year.
Can
Yeah.
you give comment? I'm not sure that was the intent. Yeah. Director Douglas, thanks.
Yeah, I don't think that's quite the intent, that they would either burn it, buy it and then donate it to us, or we would buy it and they would fund the purchase of that. But this has been in discussion with the community forest, with staff. And yeah, the intent is that we would be the owners or the holder of it and for community use.
Go ahead, Councillor Shepherd.
Yeah, okay, if that's, there's been discussion of it and it will only be acquired by the district if there's a grant for it. I'm happy with that then.
Okay. Other questions, Councillor Shepherd?
Sorry, I'm just wondering if, in terms of process, should we march through each of the individual capital critical and important items by department, or how does council want to review this?
Do you have a preference, Director Douglas?
No, we have them, if you go through that way, then there's multiple pages versus if you look at it from either on page 23, the previous agenda has it by department, and they're all listed there on one page. But if you'd like to go through critical, important, and strategic, that would be fine. And that starts on page 25 of the previous agenda.
Yep, go ahead.
Thank you. This is more a structural question, and again, it may have been covered in the last meeting, but I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around the change in format from last year. So if I'm looking at, Parks and Culture on page 25, we've got the important category, which sums up the $558,000. I know we've talked in previous years about being careful about how we publish item costs to avoid getting bids that are $1 short of the budgeted amount. But is there is there breakdowns of what, like, irrigation system upgrades is supposed to be costing us? For example?
Not,
The total's there of 558. I'm just wondering if there's a.
no,
more
not in this package.
Okay, thank you.
Or if you go to the a different part of the agenda, it's listed there. So if we, of the previous agenda, if you go to, hang on, to find it. Under 5.2, it says, hang on, no, it's not that one. Where all the business cases are, right at the beginning of the business cases, we have a total there by each project. Okay, so page 123, the previous agenda has the irrigation.
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
How would you guys like to do this?
Page 85 has all the detail on the general operating fund ones.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to do it either way, you know, from a sort of standpoint of looking at the general cost for each. I'd be nice to, I mean, from my own part, narrow down what's critical. So arts and culture, I'm seeing everything under important, but nothing under critical. So, and then I have my own preferences. I mean, I'd no, I place importance on the park and playground improvements being done, irrigation being done, but multi-use paveway pathway seem less important to me. Annual trail upgrades, less important. So I don't know how to sort of approach this.
Sorry, page 113 of the previous agenda has all the listed capital with the numbers beside them. 113, yeah. Well, right now staff are recommending both the, hang on, I gotta find it again. Both the critical and important ones that are listed. Well, they're all, anything that's got a number under them are ones we're recommending. So, so under vehicles and equipment, we have public works equipment, we have bike racks, wood chipper, mobile, traffic speed, messaging boards. Under important, we have top dressing, and under critical, fleet replacement. So at this point, we're recommending all of those. The one that
Director Douglas, sorry to interrupt you, but
Yes.
I think we're completely lost.
All right, so we go to page. Can you put? Okay, so page 25. And first box is a number of parks and cultural projects that we're recommending to the tune of 558,000. Okay. So we're recommending the ones listed here. We've gone through it as staff, we've gone through it twice, maybe 3 times, to bring the list down to achievable and the ones we think the ones that we know we want to move forward on. If you move to the next box, the only one that staff are struggling with, can you move to the next box? Is the strategic one in this box, which is the RCMP parking lot. This is one that we are working on designs of, but we haven't gotten too far on that. So we don't think this is really achievable in 2025. So this is one that we would recommend to delay.
Okay, one
Okay.
sec. Counselor Toth has a question.
Thank you, Chair. And I think I heard part of my answer in the question that I haven't asked yet. With this RCMP parking lot specifically, I seem to recall last budget, we did ask for money to be set aside to do an assessment of sort of all of the parking in Block 7 here. And so I'm just wondering whether this design work is just looking at the RCMP parking lot, or if we are looking at the whole parcel, or where we're at with that. Thanks.
Go ahead.
The intent is look at the whole area? Yes. Yep. And we're not too far along on it. We've identified a consultant, but we haven't started the back and forth yet.
So question through to Director Douglas. The RCMP parkade structure is, what's that versus under critical? Pardon?
It's under the building.
Okay, okay, so,
Yes, so that project is, so you have the roof, right?
yep,
And then you have where you walk in to the building. And then the walkway that's going out is what we're talking about that needs repairs.
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so to review, staff are feeling like the parking lot, RCMP parking lot is not 2025 achievable. Is that what you were saying?
That's what we're saying. This is the only project that would have funding component to it, meaning, sorry, borrowing
Yeah.
funding component to it.
Okay,
Okay.
Counselor Toth?
I mean, in light of getting started and making things easy, I'll move that the RCMP parking lot project be referred to the 2026 budget process for consideration.
Okay, any other comments on that? All in favor? Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
Comments?
just, oh,
Sorry, yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry,
That's
through the
okay.
chair. Moving forward, I think that's kind of moving things backward in a way. When this came up, I think last year too, I was thinking, why don't we just focus on the RCMP parking lot request, which was the original request, but then we expanded it to, our parking lot for the pool. And so it's become rather unmanageable. I wonder if we could refine it right down to, again, supporting the RCMP and just looking at what they requested initially. And the numbers should be in the budget from last year. Just an idea, rather than push it on and on, because, I mean, their security is important, and that's why they requested it. It's for their own security. Thank you.
Do you want Counselor Toth, no? You guys all moved for your mic, and so did Director Douglas. Do you have something to say in response?
We don't feel it's unmanageable at looking at the whole parking lot. Once you start changing the flow of traffic, you need to look at more than just the RCMP area.
Go ahead, Counselor Toth.
What one might even consider that what we're trying to do is a neighborhood plan for Block 7. And so I think we need that neighborhood plan in place before we go piecemeal on these projects.
Mayor Henderson, did you have something you wanted to say?
what Councillor Toth said,
Okay, so there is a motion.
if I may, sorry, not to be, that's too flippant. We have an item 180 under critical for the RCMP parkade structure. that is different than the parking lot, but I don't know how we can do the parking lot without the study, which I hear we're just now getting started on. So I have no problem deferring the 800,000 to 2026.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to call that question then. All in favor of the motion? All right, that's carried. Thank you.
Can you put the slides back up? Thank you.
Mayor Henderson has.
Thank you, Chair. Just before we get into it, so echoing perhaps Councillor Shepherd's comments earlier, how are we going to go through this? Because like you said, there's certain things without like jumping back and forth to figure out if it's $10,000, I don't really care about it. But if it's 200,000, that becomes significant. So when I look at these lists, it's really hard to know which is, is Hilltop building repairs significant or the septic field? So I'm just struggling how we're going to deal with this process-wise.
So I guess staff has gone through this individually 2 or 3 times. And there's, with the 3% capital, there's no further tax implications other than the 3% with this capital plan. We believe it's achievable and it's the least capital number that we've had for the 5 years I've been here. So we kind of went off your comment from last year to, look at it, relook at it, make sure it's part of the strategic plan, which we've provided that information. So, other than the $800,000 that we've just removed, staff are very comfortable moving forward with the rest of the projects. If we want to look through the slides and just see if there's 1 or 2 there that council are not comfortable with, that would be a way to go around it. Otherwise, staff's recommendation is the remainder of the project.
Are there other items that you're looking to defer or remove? I would suggest we go through those first and then just, this document here that has all the numbers attached to each one, if anyone's got anything in particular. They
If
can
we
bring forward.
can go to page 26 at the bottom, airport. The air fuel pump could be deferred to 2026 as well. We've had somebody look at it recently. It doesn't leak. It works accurately, and it's not something that's urgently needs replaced. And that's 155,614.
Go ahead, Councillor Shepherd.
Sorry, go ahead, Councillor Shepherd.
Chair, I'll make a motion to defer airport fuel pump to 2026 budget.
Second by Councillor Todd. Yes, Mayor
So-
Henderson.
Okay, so that's under the important category. So we're again process. So the strategic is not in staff's recommendation.
Correct, that's my understanding.
No, that's sorry.
Only critical.
Everything listed here is in our staff recommendation, except the 2 that we've just talked about.
Okay. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I thought I heard that only critical and important were,
Sorry, that was,
okay.
if I mixed that up, I apologize.
Okay, so everything outside of the parking lot that we've just deferred and the
Yes.
motion that's on the table for the airport fuel pump is in the plan.
Yes. Well, no, everything is in the plan right now. For $5.9 million, everything you see listed
Mhm.
is in the 5.9 million.
Okay,
And then we've just talked about the parking and we've just taken it out. So now we're down to 5.1 million.
okay,
And then the airport fuel pump, we take that down, we're down to just under 5 million.
Okay. So before we lose the motion, okay, Mayor Henderson?
Thank you. Yes, so what's significant about that then is, are we going to then also, since we're talking about the airport, are we going to remove the capital engagement? I don't happen to be in support of that, but I'm trying to figure out, we're cherry picking what we're going to remove, and yet airport fuel pump is more important than strategic. So common sense to me is we'd remove the strategic before we remove the important.
Unless advice has come forward that, I mean, there could be some other reason, Director Douglas.
So we didn't look at it. We're just placing them in categories. If we knew something was very critical, it went into critical. If we then all of a sudden, we also knew that things were very important, we put it there. And the ones we're recommending that are strategic for a reason. And I mean, so the bike racks, let's say, for instance, we lack bike racks throughout the downtown core. And so this is a strategic move. It's not a have to, it's not critical. It's not maybe even important, but it's would help the people using their bikes more than their vehicles to have more bike racks downtown.
Mhm.
So if council agrees with that the strategy behind that, then we would move forward with more bike racks downtown.
Councillor Toth. I'm sorry,
No,
Diane.
Sorry.
Councillor McLaughlin.
Thanks, feeling left out here. Yeah, through the chair, I am a bit concerned about even the capital projects proposed, because I'm thinking, what do we have the ones that are being carried over? And it seems to me, you know, we have so many being carried over year after year that it's hard to actually even get to the ones here. So the ones, obviously, they're being carried over, they have to be completed. It's a lot of work. So I would really like to almost minimize the number of projects that we bring forward as new projects this year. And I like the way this is laid out, but of course, things that are critical, I think we have to do, they're critical. Things that are strategic would be also something, pick out some strategically important projects. Like bike racks is one thing I really would like to see. I would actually like to see us have a whole plan for bike racks throughout the district, including at major food stores and that, because as far as I know, people who want to take their bikes tell me they can't even park their bikes, go practically anywhere. So it's really important that we start working on some of these concepts and policies, I think, rather than just picking projects. Although it's hard to do, but really, like I sort of did last year, go through the critical ones that are strategic. I would look at that as a second way of doing it. I mean, you can actually do a spreadsheet that you put these two things together and they rank them all for you in terms of importance, taking into account these two factors, whatever factors you want.
Right.
And so, I mean, I'm just sort of going through here, pulling out ones in this capital listing by department and pulling out ones that are important, but not necessarily critical and not necessarily strategic. So that's
Okay, I'm
just
gonna-
a way to do it.
I'm gonna have to put a pin in it because we have a motion on the table here, as I recall. Councillor Toth, is it?
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't interrupting Councillor McLaughlin because I agree with a lot of the comments she's making, but I did want us to call the question that is currently on the floor, and then I've also got some comments.
Okay, let's get the question because my attention span is. Okay, so removing the airport fuel pump, or to 2026 is the motion. All in favor? All right, Councillor Toth.
Thank you, Chair. So looking at the airport block here at the bottom of page 26, and also the IT block at the top of page 26, I think there's a formatting error because underneath airport fuel pump, we see engineering/infrastructure, and then we see Davis Bay seawall remediation. And then on the other side of that, we see the capital engagement. So I think that those are separate categories. I think there was just a formatting error. So I'm looking for staff to confirm that that's the case, which means we basically just removed the only thing to do with the airport with that motion just now. So just looking for confirmation from staff.
Yeah, there's two categories here. There's one airport, which is the first three boxes or levels down, and then engineering infrastructure, the bottom three rows.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
So
It is-
we just combined the boxes. That's all. We combined airport. It's got the big heading. It should have been over to the left. Yes. And then below that is engineering infrastructure projects that are in its own category. So sure, formatting area, yes.
Thanks.
Right.
Okay. Next.
Okay, so we could go through all the strategic ones. But we as staff went through all the strategic ones previously. There were a number that we did remove. These are ones that we felt were important enough to be listed here. My fear if we just go through and remove all the strategic ones is next year you're going to get a list that has no strategic and they're all going to just be in critical and important. So we're trying to message to council that not everything here is critical and important. And, but there are some strategic ones that we would like to move forward on. The bike racks being one. We have another one listed there. If you could go down to just the vehicles and equipment. Yeah, that one. So another one, there's mobile traffic, speed, and message equipment. We have a couple of them. They have been sabotaged and they don't work anymore. For us to get them fixed, it's pretty much cheaper for us to buy new ones. We are always asked to put up reader boards for speed. And so that's strategic. It's not something we need or is critical, but it's strategic. And the community, I mean, we've already been asked twice in the last 6 months where we couldn't provide the boards because they're broken. So although it says strategic, we find them to be the most important of the strategic ones that staff put together through the capital project listing. I don't know if that helps. A wood
Yeah.
chipper, the
Yeah.
parks, you know, right now they hire somebody if there's lots of trees down or branches down or whatever, you know, we probably combine them and we hire a chipper to come in versus being able to chip them ourselves. So parks seeing this as a way to reduce some costs overall, but it's not important and it's not critical. So just a little bit of context behind the strategic part of it, right?
Councillor Shepherd.
That's really helpful. Thank you for that. I'm just wondering for council then, maybe turning the question around, even department by department, is there anything that council are feel strongly against?
Well, it's not for me speaking personally, but, just comments or questions.
Yeah, if there's nothing council feels strongly against, then we're sort of moving towards approving this capital budget with the changes that we've accept the changes we've just made.
Councillor Toth.
Thank you, Chair. I'm looking at page 23 because I think it's the easiest way to sort of look at everything all in one shot. And I'm seeing there's a lot of, like, $5 million is still a significant capital list. But I'm seeing that a lot of the actual individual items here are like purchases and acquisitions and, you know, things that we need to pick up. I'm not seeing a ton of projects that are going to necessarily take a ton of time. I mean, yes, we've got the building facility renewal and hall remediation, that sort of thing. So I think to Councillor Shepherd's point, I'm sort of comfortable with where we're landing here. I'm a little concerned about equipment getting broken and we just buy more and hope it doesn't get broken. I don't know if this stuff exists with cameras built into it. Maybe we can tackle two problems at once. But I did have a question about the paving program. So I know that we budget every year for their paving program, sort of around the amount of money that we get from the community gas tax, whatever gas tax is, the term escapes me at the moment. I seem to recall that the 2024 paving program is actually a carry forward into 2025. So I'm just asking, is that correct? So we're basically looking at doubling up for 2025? Thank you.
Go ahead, Director Lee.
Yes, thank you for the question. Yes, we carried forward the 2024 amount to couple with the 2025. That'll allow us to do a more robust paving program in 2025, potentially get, draw out more bids and get a better price. So it's just a more strategic way of achieving our paving program.
Go ahead, follow up.
Just a follow-up then, and this is mostly for my own sort of thoughts and information. Given that we plan for it every year, and it's something that I think we did this previously as well, where we grouped it into 1 year. Are staff contemplating that we should be looking at it as a every 2 years type of program instead of budgeting for it annually and then carrying it forward? Like, should we be just accumulating the funds and doing this particular work every other year? Thank you.
Yeah, we could do that. We could do it every 2 years for twice the value if that's preferable in terms of process. It wouldn't reduce the cost, but it would just appear differently.
I wonder, yeah, I'd be curious to know if you actually get more bang for your buck if you're, if you have bigger projects. Sure.
Yeah, typically that's the case. But difficult to compare when you don't bid it the other way, but typically the bigger the program, the better pricing that you get.
Might be some savings there. Yeah. Thank you. Director Douglas?
Yeah, just to update, the funding is shared between the general capital reserve and what they used to call the gas tax funds, community works funds, yeah. It's called now the community building fund, something like that.
Comments, questions? I just want to, these are big decisions. I don't want to rush anybody, but I do want to keep things moving forward. So, did you have something, Sir Shepherd?
No, I mean, I'll make a motion approving the capital plan presented with the 2 changes that we've already voted on.
Seconded by Councillor Bell. Oh, yes, Director Douglas.
Could we add that the funding sources also be included that we've identified?
Yeah, friendly amendment.
Friendly
Certainly.
amendment to add with identified funding sources. You're happy with that friendly amendment, seconder?
Yep, and I don't know if you want a second amendment potentially or a different motion where you're pre-approving it so we can start to work on some of them.
Let's do that separate.
Okay.
Attention span. Okay, so motion, Mayor Henderson.
Thank you. I'm really struggling with this and I've said, my concern is this is a time where we need to be showing restraint. And while I recognize a lot of these projects are critical, even strategic, when we're talking about spending $5 million from taxation because reserves come from either grants or taxation, and we're not building our reserves. That is my concern. We talk about and you've heard me, I think I mentioned in a previous meeting, I'm actually in favor of seeing us increase the 3% because we're not putting enough away and we're burdening next year with costs that we are incurring this year. So I'm really struggling, especially with the combination of, in this motion of how are we funding it? Because I think we can agree to do certain things, but exactly whether we should be drawing those from reserves or taxation at this point is a real problem for me. So I think the combined motion, I feel obliged to vote against it for very separate reasons. Bottom line, we've got to confront some of these things directly, not offset them with one-time reserves. I guess I'm repeating myself a bit from what I said half an hour ago. But it's a tough time, folks, and I think we've got to show some leadership and make some tough decisions. Either spend it, but tax for it, or don't spend it. And I'd like to see us building our reserves, and I don't think we are doing that adequately. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Toth?
Thank you, Chair. I certainly understand and appreciate the mayor's comments. I guess the way I struggle with it is that the capital reserve contributions that we do, the 3%, was intended, my understanding is that it's intended to sort of replace the assets that we have that are depreciating that need renewal. And so sometimes I struggle with using that reserve to fund increases to service levels or new assets that we don't otherwise already own. The top dressing machine for turf fields, for example. You know, if we're talking about replacement of a septic field or building upgrades or repairs here, that sort of thing, I think that's really easy to point to that reserve and go, that's literally what we're taxing that money for, is renewal of our assets. And so I think if we have concerns about using that, communicating that funding out as sort of building up reserve to deal with asset renewal, that's a conversation we should have if we're also looking at building new assets, increasing our service level from that reserve. There's no question in there, just sort of general commentary that I think we should contemplate separately, you know, the assets that we're maintaining and replacing versus the assets that we're adding to our system. And the impact that has on that 3%. You know, we know the 3% is not enough, but that was sort of estimated based on a calculation that was done on the value of the assets at some point. So if we're building new facilities, new assets, that 3% lags behind, not just because of inflation, but because of the increase to the actual assets on the books. So I don't know, just my thoughts.
Mayor Henderson?
Yes, I want to just anchor. I agree. Any new project shouldn't be coming out of the 3%. My concern is that we're doing the maintenance that comes at us right now. Earlier outside the meeting, the conversation of water mains, and Calgary's addressed this past year, that the water mains, even ferries, all are going to fail at roughly the same time because they've all been built roughly in the same generation. Yeah. So, you know, it's not just enough to have 3% to cover because we think we can get by next year with 3%. One year we're going to get that horrendous, oh my gosh, we got to fix a lot of things. So this general capital reserve for maintenance and replacement of existing assets needs to be growing, folks.
Other comments? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, to
Councillor
pick up
Paul.
on that point, Chair, it is important then to have our asset management plans. And for instance, we're waiting for the transportation one. So I don't really know what to support in terms of new things for transportation. I see most of these are maintenance, seems to me. And of course, you have to do some maintenance, but how can we have a vision for what kind of reserves we want? We don't have some planning in terms of each type of infrastructure and when we want to support it and how much it'll cost. Because I really am struggling to be knowledgeable about that. So maybe next year we'll have some of these plans and we can be more strategic, but also in terms of doing things differently. We can't just keep building on everything we did in the past and then want to do new things on top of that. We have to make choices and think about, well, some of the things maybe we did in the past, we don't do as often, or maybe not at all. But in terms of sustainability and resilience, for instance, in the village, we could get a washout. We don't really have a storm management system there. We have culverts that have been filled in and grassy swales here and there, but I mean, well, and more development and West Seashell coming down the hill, the water's coming down. So I think I'd like to see some more planning in terms of that, and then come up with some projects for, modern approaches to stormwater management. And that, plus that can aesthetically be quite a nice, appealing approach to take as well. But it's hard to talk about these things if I don't really have a systematic way of looking at when the sewers are going to need to be replaced, or put in place in the first place, which it seems like in parts of the village there's none. So it's important, I think, that we have maybe a talk about that next year. This year we can't really do much about that, but that's why I'm thinking either critical items or strategic items are really what we should focus on right now, because we've made a strategic plan and things that are critical. And also the municipal hall is critical, that we just keep going with this project. I know it might not seem critical to some people. It seems critical to me, maybe because I come here a lot. I don't know, but thanks.
Thank you. All right. I'm going to call the question before I forget. There's a motion on, Director Douglas.
Okay, so something like the top dressing machine. What that will do for us is reduce our operating costs. So we, yes, it's a new piece of equipment, and I generally agree that the 3% should go to refurbishment of assets that we maintain. But adding that unit, right now we contract somebody to come in from out of town to top dress our fields. So we'll be reducing our operating costs to do that. So it's a tough one just to say only this. And if we're only going to take the 3% for that, then we need to build another reserve for new capital items. Right? So it's, it's more of a discussion than just the 3%.
Okay. Councillor Bell.
That means, so it's not as simple as just making a decision based on what's here. So in other words, do we have to go through this line by line, or is there other examples where if we make this decision to pass this, it can improve, it'll be a better impact, or it'll improve operating? Is there other examples of that you can identify? Or maybe not now, but go through it with that that lens?
Other than that and the chipper, and the bike racks, I don't think there's a lot of new, additional items to our infrastructure. The burner would be, but that's a grant. But trail upgrades and playground improvements, they're all refurbishment
Renewal.
projects. Davis Bay Washroom refurbishment. RCMP Arcade, most of them are refurbishment projects.
Councillor Todd.
Thank you, Chair. I will be supporting the motion on the floor. It was just my commentary was just to emphasize that consideration of the differences between what is refurbishment or renewal or replacement and what is new. And so, Mayor Henderson's comment about we need to increase the 3%. Well, maybe that's where we do have a conversation about splitting. I know we want to have less reserves rather than more reserves, but maybe that is a conversation that we need to have not during this budget cycle because we're far too late in the process. But maybe we look at it, what is an asset renewal reserve versus a capital improvement or
Yeah.
You know, we have an equipment reserve. Maybe we should be committing some money every year into the equipment reserve to fund things like the top dressing machine when it
Yeah.
comes along, right?
Good
So,
point.
yeah.
Okay, I'm going to call a question. Does everyone remember what could you repeat the motion?
Yes, the motion on the floor is that the 2026 capital plan be approved as presented with the identified funding sources, with the exception of the meeting items that were removed earlier in this meeting.
All in favor? And opposed? Mayor Henderson opposed.
I'd
Great.
like, if I may, I want to emphasize, I'm not opposed to the effort that's gone in and the recommendations, but it's mostly how are we paying for it?
Thank you. Councillor Shepherd.
Yeah, I've got to respond to that. I understand the mayor's concern. It's just that now is the time to deal with it. So, you know, I appreciate staff reducing the capital ask dramatically from the previous year. And I acknowledge it's a very good point about the reserves, but if we're going to amend it to 4%, 5%, you know, to make those difficult decisions, kind of now's the time to do it. So come forward, I would ask any counselor, come forward with specific proposals if you want hard decisions and changes to be made. Thanks.
Yeah, I take your subtle hints. We're going to break for lunch. We can reconvene at 1 o'clock, or what are you thinking? Okay. Thank you.
Okay, welcome back, everyone, to the special committee of the whole meeting. You'll notice that Councillor Rowe is not chairing the meeting now. Might be obvious, but we'll continue. And not having been here at the beginning, as I'm in Mr. Douglas, your hands. What's next? I gather we dealt with septage and sewer earlier.
Yes, we have.
So
So just, we're looking for a second capital motion, just that the capital that's been approved, that, staff be directed to start working on those items.
right. Thank you. Motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor? Carried.
Okay, and then so all the little adjustments that we've made to the budget so far, with regards to the community safety and other little adjustments, that gives us a 5.61% increase to operations, and we've already got the 3% for capital motion cumulative. So we'd be looking for a motion to incorporate a 5.61% increase for operations in the 5-year financial plan.
Okay, so what, help me here, council, what was discussed about this during the beginning of the meeting? Was there any discussion on the overall operating budget today? Mr. Decker, please.
Okay, so we talked about a couple of additional operating items that we've reduced out of the budget. So the Connect the Coast, $75,000 has been taken out of the additional operating requests. The $100,000 for contract services for engineering will stay in, but 41,000 of it will be funded from savings in wages year to date.
Yeah, thank you. So this is the chart that was,
Just
the one
the,
page that was,
the,
is that what you're?
yeah,
Yeah.
yep. So sure. Or my presentation.
Great. Oops. I guess that you're looking at the next page, I believe. Mr. Yes. Oops. Back up. Oh, you're
There you
you're
go.
doing it.
So that's the list we've been talking about there. So the Connect the Coast, 75,000 will come out. 100,000 for technical support stays in, but 41,000 of that will be funded from savings in the 2025 budget.
Right. So council, you clear? I guess the part that I wanted to highlight is the top line. What we're being presented with, that 1.8 million, I believe, is about 15% increase in our spending. So then the staff have appropriately worked on, okay, how do we mitigate it? But things like interest, that's because we didn't anticipate, I think it's fair to say, the high interest rates. So we were a winner from last year because of higher interest rates. And we had some potentially one-time saving. Well, I guess it is one-time savings, but I'm struggling with the overall level of proposed spending on the operations. Yep, please.
Through the chair, sorry, if maybe we could quickly drill down into that $1.8 million deficit and just see what.
I'm sure we can. I think I just offer, we need to be really rigorous. I said earlier this morning, the whether it's capital or operating costs, we have all the other orders of government are applying cost reductions. Mandate letters are specifying, and so I'm really struggling with this, the magnitude of this 1.8 million. So sure, we want to go to the details. Thank you. Okay. So page 5. We have that, Olson. Mhm. Yes, I believe so. That's the one you're referring to. Thank you for this. I didn't refer to that earlier, and I do know from December 18th, I was confused about, for example, a 962, is that, are we adding or subtracting? And I think we're adding, except it's called a reduction of revenues. We're adding it. Yeah, I'm just, when I look at the four, well, we can't see them all, but the four numbers, 1172, I guess we're deducting, and then we're adding the interest income, and we're deducting the reduction of revenues. Yep. And then in the other chart, we're then doing the same thing with interest income again. So I'm finding this all, on a broad level, I'm finding it very, I can't reconcile what is the, like, what are we spending, I suppose, is the ultimate
Okay, so
question on
start
a
at the
growth
top,
basis.
start at the top, and we can just go up a little higher. The overall deficit starting of 1.1 million is due to the items above. So increases to expenses, RCMP increases, contract increases, which is, the staff increases, materials and supplies, other cost of living increases throughout the budget, $1.17 million. We've taken out economic development, so we are reducing that number by 107,000. We've budgeted an additional 200 grand from interest income for 2025, so that reduces that number by 200,000. And then last year, we brought some revenues in from surplus. Building inspection revenues are expected to be a little lower this year. Transfers from reserves, operating reserves is going to be down this year. So that increases the deficit by 962,000, so that you end up at 1,827,000 as a starting deficit.
Okay, thank you. Jump in, council, but, I look at this and fine, again, I'll come back to it, we're saying we've taken the top level where the assumption is we are going to go ahead with all the items identified there. And so that's the question. Are we okay with, new debt payment? Which, I'm just picking it up, but please.
Yeah, I think I understand, Chair, your point. And I look back on page 4, where there's a little bit more detail on how you arrive at the $1.8 million deficit. But I don't know how, like, I see a dramatic change in capital grants, but that's obviously a good assumption that we're not going to given the way governments are going, receive those grants. So it seems to me it's being prudently, the reduction in revenues and sort of gross items like not receiving those grants is a prudent thing, a prudent assumption to make. I mean, I'm hoping our revenues top line end up being a bit more positive over the year, but obviously we have to be inherently conservative. So where, I don't see, you know, other than protective services, where you're moving from the 2024 adopted budget of 3.4 million to 3.7, you know, I'm assuming that comes back to RCMP. That's not really within our control. Where do we have it within our control to change something to make this a more positive, lessen that deficit?
Are you, sorry, are you directing that at me?
Well, I'm trying to address your point. How do we, you're saying, let's question the assumptions. You know, we're going into a more difficult environment. I agree completely, but what do we, you know, what specifically do we do then to change this picture?
I think we challenge the status quo. You know, we've been delivering services that, in my view, are it's hard to justify. So whether it's a case of a particular service, or can we do more with less? That's the sort of challenge that I think falls to us as council to challenge what is being presented, not in a confrontational way, but that's our role, is to set the course for the district going forward. And so the specifics of, there are certain things we cannot change debt, got to pay our debts, but pretty much everything else is by definition on the table. So you used RCMP. What's the consequence of us not increasing that? So
Sorry, I'm assuming that the increase I mentioned is contractual and that we don't have any influence over that. But to go back to your main point of levels of service, I'm wondering if there's any specific area of level of service that stands out to you that could be modified.
no, I wouldn't want to pick one. I think this is the challenge for us, before us, is how do we address the issues of affordability for our community and deliver, and what level of services are we able to afford on behalf of our taxpayers? So there's no right answer. It's what we get the big bucks for, making those sort of decisions. Councillor Bell.
So how do we approach that? How do we work through this then? What do you recommend? Take it line by line? What do we need to do?
No, I guess I would like to have seen a more perhaps vigorous assessment of the different projects, of the different processes. I don't know, it just, when we were looking earlier today, something on there was Rockwood, and the idea of, I believe maybe it was paving or something. But I mean, these are the things. How important is it in a tough situation for us to continue to provide, to spend the money to maintain and provide Rockwood to the community? And I emphasize, I'm not sending a signal that I think Rockwood is not valuable, but there's a cost to that. How much do we, how often do we replace or repair the roads? A hot topic for some of our community recently, but you know, it's just like we do at home. Maybe you're not spending as much on certain things at home these days because of the environment that we're in. So yes, I think there is a line by line element, and there's no way we're going to do that today. But when I look at this, as I've said also, and I will be making a motion to this, I think we have to go from the 3% to the 5%, personally. So if we were to do that, that compounds the impact of our year-to-year operational spending. Please.
Yeah, I'm, through the chair, I think we seem to today made a lot of progress in zeroing down what the operational and capital budgets are tentatively. We're almost there. So I'm happy to take a look at, or ask staff to come back with, well, if you modified the 3% capital contribution to 4 or 5, this is what it would turn into in terms of a tax increase and actual dollar increase to households. So, thanks.
Councillor McLaughlin, please.
Yes, thank you through the chair. Well, for those of us who have attended every minute of the budget meetings, I think we have had a very detailed description. The report is here with all the details to be read. We have the data, and the budget items sliced and diced in different ways so we can think about whether it's the departments we're concerned about in particular, or whether it's strategic plan. And it's a much smaller capital plan than before.
We're
So,
talking about the operational
okay,
budget at this.
well, the overall budget then, and the operational budget, it's very hard to tell, I think, staff, how to run this organization. I mean, we've been quibbling this morning over, dollars for one position, safety officer, what have you, and, or private security. Like, we're into the detail. And I think that just kind of tells you that generally, I mean, I may be wrong here, but, there is general support for the operating budget as it came to us, because we find too, if we do not maintain and operate things properly, then we just get more and more behind. So it's the balance I think we have to take staff's advice on for the most part. One thing that came up though is always the Water Resource Center. Is that a service that delivers to the community in a way in relation to the amount of money it costs us in terms of ongoing capital, staffing, et cetera? It's not a level of purity that is necessarily required. It's something we've somewhat committed to, but it may be something we should visit and see if there are savings there. There may be other savings in other places, but like I was saying too, like I would like to see some of our master plans and get kind of a better feel for what I think major things going forward will be. But I'm not in favor of just taxing the taxpayer. They also have RD taxes to pay. They have a lot of cost of food and housing is so extreme that I think, I don't really want to tax them extra few percent just to build up a capital reserve that then can be used, en masse for some major project that just somehow becomes somebody's, whatever, favorite topic.
So let me clarify a few things. My comments right now are related to the general operating fund. So the wastewater treatment is part of a separate budget. And sure, we should have that similar type of discussion with respect to operations. But for the moment, it is the general operating fund, and it is our role to decide what are the appropriate levels of service. So that's why I'm saying effectively what we are saying here is that we are okay. Haven't done the direct arithmetic, but the 1.8 million at the top of the slide that was on the screen, 1.8 million operating deficit, we're essentially supporting an increase of about 15% in our operating spending, our operational spending. And I'm struggling with that. How we pay for it is a separate issue. So
I could follow up with that. Salaries since before COVID have gone up quite dramatically. That alone is just something that every organization has to reckon with. If you want to keep good staff, you have to pay for them. And it's just the way it is in the modern world we are now post-COVID, I
okay,
think.
so what Councillor McLaughlin, I'm just saying that the consequence of us agreeing with this is, as I said, we're agreeing with an increase in spending of 15%. how, and then we're just, and actually more than that because of the additional operating request. And then we're discussing how to pay for it. So there's two separate issues. So go to Councillor
We've
Todd.
had lots of
I'll go to
meetings,
Thank you. I'll
so
go to
you could
Councillor-
have
I'll go to Councillor
done
Todd.
that before.
Yeah, I don't think it's fair to frame it that way. You know, when we have a budget that sees a decrease in grants from 9 million to 0, of course, it's going to result in a deficit. That's not, you know, that's just, to me, that's prudent budgeting. So, and also, you know, as I said before, it's a valuable exercise. Try and examine levels of service, but we're on the cusp here of approving the 2025 budget. I don't like to use the word task force, but it's kind of something that should roll into an exercise after this. You know, unless you can zero in on something specific right now, we could argue endlessly over whether the levels of service are appropriate or where we could economize. Thanks.
Thank you. I want to just, this is been an ongoing confusion in the community and around, and I've said it before, on behalf of my profession, I don't know why we're still doing this, that the capital grants of $9 million have no impact on the operating budget. They're commingled on this presentation. It tends to be a standard public sector accounting approach, but it's just like saying I get paid, you know, $25,000 a year, and I got a mortgage for $1 million. You didn't make $1,025,000 this year. You made 25,000. You hope to make 25,000 next year. So that's why you'll see in municipal governments that the reporting is that we have actually a surprisingly big surplus when we go out and report the way the financials are prepared. And yet we're increasing taxes. So if, follow me?
I think I follow you, but then I guess I'd say, take a look at any of the revenue or expenditure line items and say, you know, to drill down further, we have to get into what level of service that's providing, what are the increases? And this is not something we should be doing, you know, when we have, what, 2 months, a month left to approve the budget. I just think that should be done 6 months before, so that we're prepared for the 25 budget with that information. I mean, as a counselor, I'm caught out with, I can't answer your question with the time remaining.
Okay, we have on that, I believe we have till May 15th if we had to. We don't want to, but we have to have our budget approved. Am I right? May 15th?
Yes, but there's a lot of work to
Statutory.
do between now and then. on
Of
a
course, yeah.
Number known in advance.
Yeah. Okay, well, I've said my piece. Council, I'm in your hands. But I just want to anchor that. The $10 million, it's prudent not to budget for anything this year. Some of it is one big item that came in, I believe last year, and it certainly won't come again. So, but that doesn't impact our year after year after year spending. Right? So I just don't want to say that is what's impacting the proposed increase in our spending. Very separate.
And to the chair, then you know, further to my next point, you can't sort of, or you're not offering to go into any other specific items and say, hey, if we change the level of service here, we can reduce this expenditure. So we're kind of left saying that one councillor is unhappy with the anticipated increase, but I won't go further to say what changes I'm proposing.
Well, no, I don't think that's not our role. We should be given options. We've been given an option to increase spending with a few additional operating requests. We haven't been given an option that if we were to reduce a certain service, it would save that much money. So that's the part that is, I would have appreciated receiving as part of the budget package. I don't think it's our role to speculate on how much we would save by doing something less or for that matter, doing something more. Councillor Toff.
Thank you. Maybe I missed it at the December 18th meeting, but I don't recall us having made a motion asking staff to contemplate or bring forward a report of reductions of services.
Hmm.
And so in the absence of that, like, that's on us. That's not on staff. They can't, like, we didn't ask them to contemplate service reductions formally or officially or properly. If we want that, and I think that information should come at the start of the budget process. And so if that's something we want for 2026, sure, I would be interested in looking at, you know, us asking for a couple of very specific scenarios to start the budget conversation. But we didn't ask for it. I'm not sure why we should be expecting it and to what level, you know, 1%, 5%, 30%. Certainly I'm not suggesting a percentage that high, but we have a variety of opinions on the subject. So without a motion, what are staff supposed to bring back to us? Like, council works by motions, staff work based off of the motions we pass.
Yep. So, in that spirit, I will start with the first one, then to say that I would like staff to come back before we adopt this budget with methods to save $2 million in our operational spending, to define what the consequences of saving that kind of money would be. So, right, thank you. Councillor Top.
Thank you. So that's about 10% that you're asking for.
Yes.
I'm looking for some insight on where that particular level came from. Thanks.
Well, because I'm aware that some other governments are in the range of seeking 7 to 15% reductions. Other discussion, other comments? We'll call the question. Oh, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I would be supportive of having a conversation looking at, you know, if, say a 2, 5, and a 10% reduction scenario or something like that for 2026. I'm not supportive of it at the end of the process, so to speak. So I don't support the motion. I'm supportive of the concept in time for next budget cycle.
And I don't think we have the luxury. We need to take these sort of decisions. This is not something that's just come up today. We have been discussing it even last year. Councillor Shepherd, please.
I through the chair, I would invite staff's quick comment on, you know, $2 million reduction, where we would possibly get that. I mean, it strikes me that that's so dramatic. It's, yeah, at the last minute when we're approving a budget, when it's not expected, I just wonder if it's possible for anyone's staff to sort of comment generally on where you could take that money from.
Okay, I'm happy if, I'm not looking at staff for a minute intentionally, but I don't want to put them on that spot. But the point of doing that is so that we end up with some clarity on what it would look like. I agree with Councillor Toss' comment. That part of that could be, just like we often get things, you can do critical, important and strategic. It could well be if you do 2%, this is the impact. If you do 10%, that's the impact. So all of the above. So you did ask that. I'm happy to turn it to staff if you would like to. Yep.
Yeah, I can give you a broad answer on how you might go about that. Budgeting for the District of Sechelt, as with most municipalities, is fairly simplistic. Our number one expense is staff. So the easiest place to cut would be to let a bunch of staff go to try and get up to your 2 million. We have an extra RCMP person that we're not obliged to pay for, so you can get rid of that. That's another one. And that's more than just a wage. It's also a car and all the machinery that goes with it. Then you can look at other services that we provide and try to keep the residential anger to a minimum by stopping doing some things. So you may not brine and salt, the vast majority of roads that we do. We would only do, say Twanic and what have you. The really steep areas and forget everything else. Yeah, so you can start whittling it away at that rate. Planning and engineering are another very simple area to go into. So you just start doubling up your application times or tripling them, whatever you like, and cut back there as well. So those are the heavy lifting ones.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
It would help, though, if council's got a number in mind. If we're talking about nothing more than a 0% tax increase for a period of time, that would be good to know. Because we won't waste our time doing this. We'll just come back with a zero-based budget. It's not a problem.
I don't think that's the issue. The issue is it's not about a number, it's about services. So there's certain services that I'm sure all of us would say are mandatory, and others that are still important, but not as mandatory. So I do support Councillor Toth's approach, doing gradual, what are the different items that if we did reduce some of the spending in one area, fine. We have to discuss that as a subjective thing, not driven by numbers.
Through the chair, I'm confused then. Are we moving this discussion into 2026, where we sort of get a more thoughtful opinion from staff? It just seems to me that if we ask staff for a report on a 10% reduction, we're going to get a very simplistic report with dramatic measures. And I don't know if that helps our, just from our CEO's response, are we willing to lose an RCP officer? I don't know if in the end it's going to help us.
I think it's a discussion we have to have, and so that's my view, obviously. Councillor Bell.
Clarification, do we have a motion on the
Yes.
table?
Yes, so the motion is for staff to come back to us with a report on how to save up to $2 million from our operating spending for this year. And that report to come back before we approve the budget. Councillor Toth has commented in a different way, but that's the motion that is on the table at the moment. Okay. All right, so I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Councillors Bell, Shepherd, McLaughlin, and Toth opposed. Okay. Now, Council, how would you like to proceed? Councillor Toth.
Thank you. I've shut all my stuff down because I've got another appointment I've got to get to, but I am interested in having this conversation in time for the start of 2026 budgeting. So I'm happy to put a pin in it for now, but it is something that we do need to consider how we want to have that conversation. I don't want staff to necessarily come to us with a zero-based budget. It's almost like a mini organizational review, if you will, I guess, in a way, that I'd like to sort of have a contemplation over. We're going into the budget deliberations. We're looking at a couple of scenarios where we might be able to find some efficiencies or some savings. What those percentages are, we should discuss down the road when we're not only half here and some of us have other places to be and things are midstream. Thanks.
Okay. So Council, so that is by way of a comment, or is that a motion you're leaving? Right, okay, that's, yeah. Okay, Councilor McLaughlin?
Yeah, if we're going to go through this exercise, I think it would be helpful to do some speculation for the future. We're doing an OCP review. We'll have some idea of perhaps some new population projections, housing projections, some new environmental areas perhaps that may change the way we see where development will go and what it might look like. So I think if we just kind of take almost a strategic look at it as well, and a little bit of pie in the sky, and do it from the current situation that we know, but also, you know, what the staffing might be in the future, or how they might work. They might work remotely, more people or something. But just ways that we can kind of think about the future, 5 years ahead, I think would be kind of helpful. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. So the other one then, Councillor Toth reminded me to, that we proceed by motion. So the other motion I would like to make, which I have said in the past, so I would like to see us increase the 3% to 5%. The capital reserve, which is targeted and intended to be used for renewal and maintenance of infrastructure. Is that a, before we discuss it, is there a second? Is that a second, or was that a discussion? Or
Yeah, because I thought you put something on the table
Okay.
about what's that gonna cost, what's that gonna impact in terms of dollars? What's that gonna look like? Did you ask that question?
well,
Yeah.
about, I think I heard $20 per household
Is it?
per percent.
Yeah, it's very close to $20 per percent
Okay.
on an average home. So, yeah, the 3% currently would be bringing in just over $407,000. If you went to 5%, that would bring in just over, well, bring in $689,000.
Councillor sorry, Shepherd.
Through the chair, I'm interested, do you mind if we take a look at where we are in terms of what we've approved in the budget, septic, sewer, where we are tentatively on the operating budget, and then make an amendment to see 4% and 5% increase? Can we get an email on, with that information? That's, I'm supportive of seeing.
So I can do a quick summary if the worship wishes.
Well, yeah, I think that recognizing that some of us have a meeting in 20 minutes. We'll lose quorum when that happens. I think it should come, as you've said, by email. So. Don't know where we go from here because I don't think.
So we're currently at 5.61% increase for operations, and that was, if we had a motion around that, we could start building the 5-year financial plan around that. We already got the motion for 3%, and the information I could send out would, give you information to look at the 3, 4, 5% for capital.
Right. And I want to encourage council, this is not something to be driven by the end result. When I make this recommendation, or I'm speaking to a motion that hasn't been seconded, so acknowledging that, the point is, I'm trying to make sure we cover the costs of our operations today. And I doubt that 5% is enough, but it's 3, we know 3 isn't enough, because we're not accumulating reserves year over year. We're spending everything we're bringing in. So, that's getting the bottom line, getting the punchline is nice, but it shouldn't, the tough decision is, hey, we need to do something. So I'm going to make it a motion and test the 4 of us that we do increase that by 5% to 5%. I'll look for a seconder. That's fine. I mean, we can bring it back another time, but I feel very strongly about this, that it is false economy to think, oh, well, we'll get by until next year. Pretty common. Counselor Shepherd.
Yeah, to the chair, no, I recognize that you're anxious about that we're not accumulating. I thought we were accumulating reserves, but all I would like to see is the numbers set out to see the sort of levels of impact of 3 to 4 to 5% with what we've agreed to date. So not saying no, just would like to see this instead of voting on the fly. Thanks.
Okay. Well, and it hasn't been seconded, so I won't be calling you to vote. Okay. So I certainly am not feeling comfortable to vote on the operating budget proposal at this stage, but I'm in council's hands. Please, Councillor Shepherd.
I mean, for my part, no, sorry, I know this represents a slowdown in the process, but I'm not comfortable as well. I'd like to see what those impacts are. So would like to see that information before we move to finalizing the operating budget.
Councillor Bell? No. Was that, did you have anything you? No. Councillor McLaughlin? Okay. In which case, Mr. Douglas, I think know what we're looking for, and guess we'll, for this right now, we'll move to adjourn. Seconded, all in favor? We're adjourned. There's nobody, I assume nobody on Zoom? Oops. Oh, he's got.